Among us here at the Homebrew Crew, we seem to think this one is sus.
Today we're reviewing Amongst Thou from Stephen Jasper Orr.
Welcome to the Homebrew Crew. I'm Tony, this is Sean, and today we're reviewing not Among Us,
No.
Amongst Thou.
Yes, now Amongst Thou is based off of the Among Us game, which is a very, very popular, kind of like this deceiving mafia werewolf style kind of game, where essentially a bunch of players are working together on the same task, but one of them is actually a murderous evil person.
And Steve Jasper Orr has taken this and converted it into something that works really, really well when you play online with this as well, like on a virtual tabletop or what have you, but there are instructions in it on how to play it at the table as well.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a really interesting thing. Essentially, the background behind the adventure is that you're a bunch of you're this party and you're trying to go basically to your next objective or your next destination. But basically, when you're on this ship, the air captain actually tells you that something is awry, something doesn't feel right. And one of you may be a not what they seem to be.
Well, with that, we should probably get into this thing and kind of show off some of the cool stuff about it. So let's get down to it. Here we are, down in the corner already.
Yes.
And this, I love the artwork on this.
Yeah, very well themed. I love the little classes that they kind of hint to here.
Yeah, see, and it's kind of an interesting little thing that you set up because you do get maps with this as well.
You do, yes, yeah.
And let's just get into this little guy here.
Now, it's really interesting. So right at the beginning, they do talk a little bit how you might want to set this up. There aren't hard instructions. So the way that you kind of have to run this is that as you're running the game, like in Among Us, typically other players can't always see what the other players are doing. That's kind of the whole point of the game. Here, you kind of have to do the same thing. Essentially, if you're running this online, you can use like a fog of war. You can also use like private voice chat channels or messaging channels to essentially make sure that the party members can't see other party members unless they're within range or in a similar room. Otherwise, it kind of takes away the whole point of seeing who's might be the deceiver, who's doing what tasks and things like that. Running it in person is a little difficult just because you have to kind of figure out a way for players to not look at the whole board. Some ideas behind that is you might have players maybe like come into the room one at a time.
Close their eyes.
Yeah, close their eyes.
Because that's normally how you would play werewolf.
Yeah, right, exactly. Right? There's talk about how you can use like a cell phone device to like maybe send messages. Maybe being quiet, but it is definitely possible. It's not impossible to run this in person. And
when it comes to an online play with that, I would suggest using things like with my players, we use TeamSpeak, and you can set up whisper keys.
Yes.
So that you can, whisper to the DM a particular thing that you're doing or what have you, and then it just makes it a little bit easier that way.
Right, exactly. Now, the setup for this adventure is essentially whether or not you're doing this as a one-shot or part of a larger campaign, you're all hopping on this big airship to get to your next destination. The air captain lets you on, but at some point during the adventure, the airship stops suddenly as it begins to break down, and the captain asks the party to essentially help him in fixing the ship. Now,
the one thing I would say about this too, if I were to run this, I wouldn't necessarily tell my players in the beginning.
Yes.
You would start it off as a normal adventure, okay, airship, or even just a regular ship. You can just kind of flavor this the way you want. And then don't let them understand that it's actually them playing Among Us until after they
definitely kind of like give them that mystery. And the nice thing is you can actually even have a couple of ideas for what the deceiver might be. If you're running this in a longer campaign, maybe the person becomes possessed by an evil spirit, or maybe they're replaced by a doppelganger, or if it's a one-shot, maybe they're just an evil vampire or something. So
look, we just got a new subscriber in the middle of the review.
Wow, all right, well, thank you so much.
But as we're going through there too, he does provide a roll table for you as well.
Yeah.
Which is pretty neat. So you can kind of go through that. And then why don't you break down the stuff on the locations? Because we all know the map of Among Us.
Yes.
This is a little similar.
Yeah, and just in case you aren't familiar, essentially in Among Us, you're all in this ship, and you have to go to these different locations to actually fix the ship and perform a task. Obviously, if you're the deceiver, like in Among Us, you're trying to pretend that you're doing these, but you're actually trying to kill players on the way.
Right, exactly. I mean, there's always the thing. Now, this ties into the whole the wizard is sus and this kind of thing, which I think is hilarious too. And this is something that I really enjoy. Steve Jasper Orr always does these really cool like mini game type releases, and I think this one fits in just perfectly with what he had.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a really nice conversion here. Actually, as you see, there's a 1d10 chart that you can roll on. Each player is going to get a task, even the deceiver, and basically they're going to have to go to each location, wherever this task is, and they have to make a skill check depending on the type of task and try to succeed on it.
Pretty cool, right?
Yeah, and during their turn, they actually do a couple of different actions. They can move, they can attempt to do the task, or if you're the deceiver, you can attempt to sabotage a task or murder someone.
See? Always works.
Yes, exactly.
Murder is always fun, isn't it?
And I really do appreciate the way that this is set up because it's actually pretty straightforward. It does kind of break outside of the boundary of typical D&D. When you're the deceiver and you're going in to kill someone, you're not really making a roll to see if it happens.
Right.
Kind of like in Among Us, it just kind of happens. But it's really cool because for the deceiver, when you're sabotaging a task, it actually does a lot of little neat things. You can either require the player to go to a different room to complete the task, or give them disadvantage, or make them do another separate thing. So there's a lot of really neat nuances.
Yeah,
there.
It's really creative in the ways that it comes up with each of these different sabotage things. Like, I really enjoy how it just kind of takes what you normally would know about Among Us and really it adapts it to D&D.
It's surprising how well it kind of converts over, and it kind of simplifies, typical D&D mechanics, but to a certain extent. And then even if you actually get killed, just like in Among Us, you still have to actually go around and perform tasks. But I kind of like it here. You have disadvantage on it since you're now this apparition. It's harder for you, and things like that.
Now, I would talk about reviving people at the end of it. Obviously, if you're playing this with your normal players or what have you,
yes.
I mean, this is meant to be played as like a one-shot with pre-mades.
Yeah.
But if you play with your normal characters or what have you, obviously you can have some way of reviving them when they get back to
I don't think they would appreciate being killed without a roll or some kind of combat. So yeah, definitely consider that. At the end, they actually do detail, in case you're doing like a longer campaign, you could reason that a player isn't killed but maybe knocked into like a dreamlike state until the end of the adventure.
Right.
So that's kind of one way you can get around it. And then, of course, like in Among Us, you can call an emergency meeting in case you feel like you know who the murder might be. Then you can go for the vote. Obviously, whoever gets the most votes gets kicked off, and the DM has to let them know if they got the right person or not.
Now, it's I love this thing. I think this is a great mini game. The artwork is hilarious.
Very cute. Very adorable, yes.
And it works pretty well. Now, the last thing we want to go over is the win conditions on that.
Yeah. So there are basically two ways it's going to go down. Either the crew members are going to win by completing all the tasks or successfully voting off that deceiver, or the deceiver wins once they've murdered every single other character and they've avoided being voted off the ship.
Pretty simple, pretty similar to Among Us with that. He even gives you these little task score sheets.
Yeah, nice way to keep
track of stuff. And then there is a magic item.
There is one magic item that you can optionally give to your players, especially if you are including this in a longer campaign. Basically, if you succeed at this and the crew members are able to fix the ship, the captain is really happy and he gives them a monocle of revelation.
Now, the monocle of revelation, obviously gold monocle here.
Yeah,
very nice
looking.
As an action, you can speak the monocle's command word and expend one charge of it. That charge may be used to grant you true sight out to 120 feet, which is a good distance.
That's a lot of maps, yeah.
Or maybe used to grant you advantage on your next wisdom insight check.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of very fitting with the mood, trying to make sure that you know what's going on.
It's also kind of cool that it's a monocle, It's like,
yeah, exactly, exactly. And then, of course, at the end here, you get these really, really awesome maps. It is on a grid, so you actually have really little issue converting this over to D&D 5e if you do want to run this adventure.
That's right. Now, again, if you guys want to pick that up, you can pick that up at DMsguild. It's Amongst Thou by Steve Jasper Orr. We'll leave a link in the description below like we always do.
Yes, and it's really interesting to see that we've actually seen a couple people trying to make Among Us content for D&D, and this is a really good example of taking something that's pretty modern and pretty new and still being able to convert it to work within the mechanics of D&D and kind of seeing that really nice mixture of the two working together really well.
Totally. We love reviewing stuff like this, so anything that you guys have that is unique or trying to take something that's in culture right now and popular out there and making it into D&D, go ahead and send it to us at dmbrewcrew@gmail.com. We'd be happy to take a look. I was going to say not everything makes the channel.
Not everything makes the channel.
But we do our best.
And of course, if you are new to the channel, we do review a lot of homebrew stuff on here. We review classes, races, monsters, items. If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe down below and hit that bell notification. You'll actually get a nice notification as soon as you get a new video up.
And remember, the best campaigns are always ones that are homebrewed. So until next time,
keep brewing.